Why getting older is God's greatest blessing. My friend, I want to ask you something. When was the last time you thanked God for the gift of getting older? Now, before you shake your head and say, "Father, you must be joking," hear me out. I know the world tells us that aging is something to fear, that gray hairs, wrinkles, and slower steps are signs that life is slipping away, that youth is the only time worth living, and everything after that is just surviving. But that's a lie. Growing older is not a punishment. It's not a tragedy. It is, in fact, one of the greatest blessings God has ever given us, and I'm going to tell you why. You see, I've spent years sitting with people at every stage of life. I've baptized the young, married the hopeful, counseled the lost, and held the hands of the dying. I've seen the fire of youth, and I've seen the wisdom of age. And if there's one thing I know for certain, it's this. The people who have lived the longest have also loved the deepest, forgiven the most, and understood God in ways that youth simply cannot. Aging is not losing something, it's gaining something. A clearer vision, a deeper faith, a heart that has been tested and proven. It's an invitation to walk closer with God, to leave behind the noise of this world, and to focus on what truly matters. So if you're watching this and feeling anxious about growing older, if birthdays feel more like reminders of what you've lost instead of what you've gained, stay with me. Because by the end of this, I pray you'll see aging the way God does, as a sacred journey, a masterpiece in the making, and the greatest gift you never knew you had. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Wisdom of Time. Let me tell you a secret. The world glorifies youth, but it secretly envies the wisdom of the old. Think about it. When you're young, everything feels urgent. Every decision feels like it will make or break your future. You chase after success, love, validation, sometimes without even knowing why. The world tells you to rush, to grab as much as you can before your time runs out. But as you grow older, something incredible happens. The things that once consumed you, the anxieties, the pressures, the need to prove yourself, start to fade. Not because they don't matter, but because you realize they never mattered as much as you thought they did. And in their place comes wisdom. God gives wisdom to those who have walked through the fire, to those who have known both joy and suffering. This is why, in Scripture, the elders were always the ones people turned to for guidance. Think of Moses, who led Israel not in his youth, but as an old man. Think of Job, who after losing everything, didn't find peace in getting back what he lost. He found peace in understanding who God truly is. I've sat with many elderly men and women, and let me tell you, their words carry a weight that no motivational book or TED Talk can match. Because their wisdom wasn't learned in a classroom, it was learned through life. Through love and loss, through faith and failure. One of the holiest people I ever met was an old woman who had outlived her husband and all but one of her children. You would think that so much loss would make her bitter. But no, she smiled often. She held my hand tightly when she spoke. And when I asked her how she remained so strong, she simply said, "Because I have lived long enough to know that God never leaves." That's wisdom. That's a gift only time can give. So don't be fooled by a world that worships youth. The young may have strength, but the old have understanding. And understanding, true wisdom, is worth more than anything youth could offer. Chapter 2. The Beauty of a Life Well Lived. There's something sacred about an old face. Every wrinkle is a story, every gray hair, a lesson, every scar, a testimony of endurance. But the world tries to erase them. We hide age behind creams, hair dyes, and surgeries. We fear looking old, as if looking young somehow makes us more alive. But tell me, who is truly more alive? The one who has just started their journey, or the one who has lived it? I once visited a man in his 80s who had been married for over 60 years. His wife had just passed away, and when I walked into his home, he was sitting in his chair, holding an old photograph of her. She was so beautiful, he said, tracing her face with his fingers. I looked at the photo. She was young in it, smiling in a way only youth allows. But then I looked at him, this man who had loved her through sickness, through struggles, through decades of ordinary days. And I realized she was beautiful in that photo, yes. But their love was far more beautiful now. Because beauty isn't in perfect skin or youthful energy. Beauty is in a life that has been lived well. In hands that have held and healed. In eyes that have seen both heartbreak and miracles. In a soul that has loved deeply, fully without regret. We don't celebrate an unfinished painting. We celebrate the masterpiece once it's complete. So why do we fear the final strokes of our own masterpiece? Aging is not decay. It is the completion of something beautiful. It is the fulfillment of a life that God has carefully shaped, moment by moment. The world will tell you that your best years are behind you. God tells you your most meaningful years are still unfolding. Embrace them. Chapter 3. Strength in weakness. There's a moment in life when you realize that your body isn't as strong as it used to be. Maybe it's when climbing stairs leaves you breathless, or when your hands start shaking as you reach for a cup of coffee. Maybe it's when you look in the mirror and see a reflection that doesn't quite match the way you feel inside. And in those moments, it's easy to feel diminished. Like you're losing something you can never get back. But what if I told you that losing physical strength can actually make you stronger? You see, the world tells us that strength is about muscles, speed, and independence. But God tells us that true strength has nothing to do with those things. True strength is in the Spirit. It's in the ability to trust God even when your body fails you. It's in surrendering to His plan instead of clinging to what you think you should be. St. Paul understood this better than anyone. He had a thorn in his flesh, some kind of weakness or affliction that he begged God to take away. And do you know what God told him? My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:9. Think about that. God's power is not made perfect in our strength. It is made perfect in our weakness. I once knew a man who had been a strong, independent worker all his life, but in his old age, he suffered a stroke and became dependent on his family for even the simplest tasks. At first he was angry, embarrassed, he felt useless. But over time, something changed. He stopped focusing on what he couldn't do and started focusing on what he could. He spent his days praying for his children and grandchildren. He shared stories that taught his family lessons no school ever could. And when he finally passed, his loved ones told me that his final years were the most meaningful because, for the first time, he allowed himself to be fully dependent on God. My friend, don't be afraid when your body grows weak. Because God is not asking you to be strong in the way the world defines it. He is asking you to trust Him, to let Him carry you. And that kind of strength? That is the strength that leads to heaven. Chapter 4. Love deepens with age. Do you remember the first time you fell in love? The excitement, the fire, the feeling that nothing else in the world mattered except the person in front of you? Love in youth is intense. It burns bright, fast, and beautiful. But love that lasts, love that has weathered life, is something even more extraordinary. I have officiated many weddings in my lifetime, and every time I see a young couple exchange vows, I pray they understand what they're truly saying. Because love isn't just about passion, it's about perseverance. It's about choosing each other, not just in the glow of romance, but in the exhaustion of real life. And those who have been married for decades, they understand this in a way that newlyweds simply cannot. I remember visiting an elderly couple in my parish, both in their 90s. The husband had trouble walking, and the wife's eyesight was failing. But every morning they would sit together on their porch, hold hands, and pray. One day I asked them, "What's the secret to staying in love for so long?" The wife smiled and said, "We stopped trying to change each other a long time ago. and we started just loving each other as we are. That, my friend, is the beauty of love that has endured. It is no longer about impressing each other. It is about knowing each other deeply, the flaws, the failures, the weaknesses, and loving anyway. The world tells us that love is most beautiful when it's young. But I tell you this, love is most beautiful when it has lasted. And it is the same with our relationship with God. When we are young in faith, we love Him for what He gives us: blessings, protection, answered prayers. But as we grow older, we begin to love Him not just for what He does, but simply for who He is. That is the love that lasts into eternity. So if you are growing older, do not mourn the loss of youthful passion. Rejoice in the deep, steady love that only comes with time. Because the longer you have loved, the closer you are to understanding the very heart of God. Chapter 5. The Gift of Legacy. Let me ask you something. What do you want to be remembered for? When people speak your name years from now, maybe long after you've left this world, what will they say? The truth is, the things we chase in our youth, money, success, status, fade quickly. No one remembers how many promotions you got. No one tells stories about how expensive your car was. But what people do remember is how you made them feel, how you loved, what you gave. That is your legacy. And here's the beautiful part. As you grow older, you have more opportunities than ever to pour wisdom, faith, and love into the lives of others. You become the storyteller, the teacher, the rock that younger generations turn to. Think of the great figures in the Bible. Abraham, the father of nations, left a legacy of faith that shaped history. David, despite his failures, left behind psalms that still bring comfort today. Paul, who once persecuted Christians, left letters that have guided the church for centuries. None of them were perfect, but they each left behind something eternal. I once met a woman who spent most of her life feeling like she had accomplished nothing. She never had a high-paying job. She never traveled the world. But in her final days, as she lay in her hospital bed, her children and grandchildren surrounded her, holding her hands, crying, not just in sorrow, but in gratitude, because she had given them everything that mattered. She had taught them how to love, how to pray, how to forgive. And when she took her last breath, she left behind something that money could never buy, a family filled with faith, bound together by love. So if you ever feel like growing older means becoming less relevant, let me remind you, the older you get, the more your life matters, because you are shaping the next generation. You are passing down wisdom, faith, and love in ways that no one else can. And that is a legacy that will outlive you. Chapter 6. Finding Purpose in Every Season. There is a lie that society tells us, a lie that is especially dangerous as we grow older. And that lie is this: you don't have a purpose anymore. The world has a way of making the elderly feel like they are in the way, like their best years are behind them, like they are waiting for life to end rather than still living it. But let me tell you the truth. If you are still breathing, God still has a purpose for you. Moses was 80 years old when God called him to lead Israel out of Egypt. Sarah was 90 years old when she gave birth to Isaac. Anna the prophetess was well into her 80s when she witnessed the infant Jesus at the temple and shared the good news. You see, God does not measure your usefulness by your age. He measures it by your willingness. I once knew a man who, after retiring, fell into depression. He felt like he had nothing left to contribute. But one day, his grandson asked him to teach him how to pray. And that small request changed everything. He started sharing stories of his faith. He started mentoring young men at church. He began to see that his purpose wasn't gone. It had simply changed. And when he passed, he left behind a family with stronger faith, a church with deeper roots, and young men who carried his wisdom into the world. My friend, do not believe the lie that your time is over. Your purpose may look different now. Maybe you are no longer building businesses, but you are building souls. Maybe you are no longer raising children, but you are raising up faith in those around you. God's plan for you is not finished. If you are still here, then there is still work to be done. So rise each morning, not with sorrow for what has passed, but with joy for what is still to come. Because every day you wake up is a day that God has chosen to keep you here for a reason. And that, my friend, is a blessing beyond measure. Chapter 7. Drawing closer to heaven. There comes a time in life when we start thinking more about the end. When we are young, death feels distant, something that happens to other people, not to us. But as we grow older, we lose people we love, friends, family members, even people younger than us. And slowly, we realize, one day, it will be our turn. For many, this thought brings fear. The world teaches us to cling to life, to do everything we can to stay young, to avoid even thinking about what comes next. But my friend, as believers, we do not have to fear growing older, because growing older means growing closer to heaven. Think about that. Every birthday you celebrate, every wrinkle you gain, every year that passes, it is not just time slipping away. It is time bringing you closer to the place where there is no more pain, no more sorrow, no more suffering. Jesus told his disciples, "I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also." John 14:2-3. Do you hear that promise? Heaven is not an ending. It is a homecoming. It is the fulfillment of everything we have ever longed for. It is the reunion of every love we have ever lost. It is standing in the presence of the one who has walked with us through every season of life. I once sat with a woman in her final days. She was weak, but her spirit was full of peace. She held my hand and said, "Father, I am not afraid. I have lived my life, and now I get to go home." That is the faith I pray for all of us to have. Because growing older is not about counting down the years. It is about getting ready for eternity. It is about letting go of the temporary things of this world and fixing our eyes on what is to come. And the best part? The longer we live, the more we understand God's love, the more we see his faithfulness, the more we trust that he will carry us home. So do not be afraid of growing older. Instead, let it remind you that heaven is drawing near. And when that day comes, when you finally step into eternity, you will see that every wrinkle, every struggle, every moment of your life was leading you to this, to glory, to joy beyond measure. To the arms of your Father, saying, "Welcome home." Conclusion: embracing the blessing. So, my dear friend, what have we learned? We've learned that getting older is not something to fear. It is something to cherish. With age comes wisdom that only time can give. With age comes a beauty that no mirror can reflect, but that shines from a life well lived. With age comes a love that has deepened, endured, and reflected the very heart of God. With age comes the opportunity to leave a legacy, not of wealth or achievements, but of faith, kindness, and love. With age comes the understanding that true strength is not found in a body that never weakens, but in a heart that has learned to trust in God's grace. With age comes a renewed purpose, to guide, to teach, to love, and to prepare for the greatest journey of all. And most of all, with age comes the greatest blessing of all, the promise that we are drawing closer to our eternal home. The world may tell you to fear aging, but God tells you to embrace it. Because every year, every wrinkle, every gray hair, every moment, it is all part of his perfect plan for you. So instead of mourning what is past, rejoice in what is still to come. Instead of longing for your younger days, embrace the beauty of the present. Instead of fearing the future, walk boldly toward it, knowing that your best days are not behind you, but ahead of you, in eternity with the Lord. I pray that as you look in the mirror, you no longer see aging as a loss, but as a gift, a divine blessing, a masterpiece in the making. Because, my friend, your life, Every moment of it is a story God is still writing, and I promise you, the final chapter will be the most beautiful of all. May God bless you, today and always. Amen.